Hey everyone, if we haven't met already, my name is Carter and I'm so excited to virtually meet you and glad you're here. Welcome to another video on my channel, The Nancy Drew Times. Before we get started, I would like to mention to everyone watching, thank you so much. I could not believe when I checked my phone that we had reached 100 subscribers and I was so grateful and excited for this community. I appreciate everyone that's riding along with me and I love meeting and talking with all of you. Today's video has me so excited because we are focusing on another game theory. Yes, these are some of my all-time favorite topics. I love thinking about all the what ifs in the games. And this theory was actually brought to light when I was filming my previous video that I uploaded to YouTube, ranking all Nancy Drew game culprits. And if you want to watch that, I'll make sure to link a card in the video. But while filming the video, I began thinking about a certain game's ending that actually reminded me of another game's ending. They both sounded very similar, and then I started thinking on the two characters and associating the games together, and boom! This theory was birthed into existence. But before we dive into discussion, I would like to warn everyone that there will be spoilers for the following 4 games. Stay tuned for Danger, Ransom of the 7 Ships, The Phantom of Venice, and The Captive Curse. Alright, let's get started. So, I first have to flash back to 2008 when The Phantom of Venice first came out. I was only 9 years old, but man, I was beyond excited for another game to play. School was out, summer was here, and you know I was sitting there at the computer for days playing a scopa, riding the gondola, and being a super cool spy for the Italian government. And once I finally reached the end of the game and watched the end sequence, my 9-year-old brain had a creative thought that just would not go away. But before that thought comes into the picture, I thought it would be helpful to actually watch the scene together just for a refresher.
Don't try to hide from me, Helena.
Nancy, what are you doing here?
Getting my locket back.
What are you? A cop? A government agent? A thief? What? What do you want?
I'm just an amateur detective who wants what all decent people want. Justice.
I had a feeling you were up to something. Your sudden arrival at Nascosta, your feigned interest in Venice, always asking questions. You've been watching Fango from the Altena all this time, haven't you? And now the little spy wants her locket back. Well, good. Because you're not getting it back. Ever.
Helena! Stop! She's getting away!
Don't be too pleased with yourself, Nancy Drew. It's not over between us. Not by a long shot.
Ooh, this culprit, Helena. She was so good, but something always intrigued my 9-year-old self, and that was the line where Helena says, "It's not over between us. Not by a long shot." Yes, Helena would be the perfect person to bring back as a villain. She swore her revenge on Nancy Drew, and you could tell by her tone, she meant it. But little did I know that just 1 year later, her interactive actually did bring a villain or a culprit back in Ransom of the 7 Ships. And I actually remember telling my mom, "What? How did they know my idea?" But in reality, Dwayne Powers was a great culprit to bring back. It's unfortunate how they did it with him being the only suspect, but still, the thrill of learning it was actually Dwayne Powers was still there because, I mean, this is the same guy that was pulling off some legitimately scary threats. I mean, he tried to kill some people. He was scary. And the thing is, bringing back Helena only a couple years after The Phantom of Venice had released wouldn't have been a smart move for her interactive, and I really wasn't thinking about that when I was 9 years old. I mean, they needed to bring back a culprit from long ago to make it more realistic. So after playing Ransom of the 7 Ships and Phantom of Venice, I kind of forgot that I had that thought and moved on and kept playing the next few batches of games that would come. Now, let's reverse to a few days ago. I'm sitting in my office space creating another YouTube video where I rank all the game culprits, right? And one of those culprits was Anja. And in the video, I begin breaking down her character's end sequence dialogue where they explain why they did what they did. And it hit me during the filming. I said, well, wait a second. This sounds oddly familiar. Let's watch Captive Curse's ending as a refresher.
Looks like I don't need this now. If you had any idea how hot it was in that thing. Well, enough with the niceties. Let me out! No! Nancy! It was all a misunderstanding. I'm sorry. Don't leave me here!
That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm the girl in the dress, and you're the monster, remember?
You don't want to make an enemy of me. One day, I will find you.
Well, there's a waiting list. I hope you're patient. Goodbye, Anja.
Auf Wiedersehen, Nancy. You do know what that means, don't you? It means until we meet again.
Wait. What?
It means until we meet again.
That sure does sound a lot like what our friend Helena Burg said. But before we actually dive into the theory, I also want to give a little background on the characters from the Phantom of Venice and the Captive Curse, just so we can make sure that we are caught up on these characters. So if you remember from Phantom of Venice, Helena Burg was actually a guest of the Canis Costa, originally from Hamburg, Germany. And it's not her first time traveling. She's actually been to England, France, Germany. She's very well traveled, mostly because her occupation is a journalist for the Eurowelt magazine, and she covers a lot of news and a lot of stories. And one of the people that she covers was Leo Macciano, the leader of a crime ring. She spent so much time researching and learning about his crimes that she actually mimicked his ways to form her own crime ring that stole valuable pieces to pay off a buyer from Chicago in the States. She thought of everything. Antonio Fango to research where the next hit would be, Nico Petit to perform the stealing, Gina to research the security of whatever building the stealing would be at and how Nico would surpass it, Enrico Taza to hide the pieces, but in the end, Nancy foils her plans and she ends up going to prison for it. In The Captive Curse, we learn that Anja Mittelmeier, also a German native like Helena, but from a different area, sought revenge on her ex-boyfriend Marcus, who owned the castle in which she was able to get a job at. She lied on her resume to get there and faked numerous monster sightings to scare people and create a bad reputation for Marcus. Near the end, she spills about her plans to Nancy, saying she wanted to create a deadly accident and frame Marcus for it by creating fake emails in his name. The deadly accident involved Nancy being the victim. But as always, our favorite detective foils her plans too by opening the dungeon door and trapping Anja, who also went to prison for 20 to 30 something years, as Nancy states. Alright, so now that we've gotten a little character background, I think it's time we actually dive into the theory itself. How do Helena and Anja get their revenge on Nancy? Here's my personal theory. While Helena's crimes were performed in Italy, the authorities needed to bring her back to Germany, her home country, for imprisonment. The indictment process would be a lot easier to file and fill out if it was done in her place of origin. We never really learned the exact location of where Castle Finister is in Germany, but I imagine that close within the area, there's probably a high-profile prison somewhere for those that perform crimes with higher treason. In Germany, prisons are drastically different from the US. A lot of the times these prisons are less about punishment and more about rehabilitation for the one who did the crime. They can vary depending on the crime and usually have different prisons for children and women. In this case, I believe Helena and Anja were sent to the same prison, a prison for women who performed high-profile crimes. During the prisoners' free time to roam around and talk with other inmates, Helena and Anja's paths cross and notice each other's accents. Helena asks, "Ah, you speak German?" Anja replies with "Ja." The two get to know each other that day and begin telling each other their life stories. At one point in the conversation, Helena asks Anja, "So tell me, why are you here?" Anja laughs and replies, "Oh, my ex. Oh, I should have never even dated him. He's so..." Helena cuts her off. "Ah, boyfriend problems, huh?" Anja quickly inserts, "Mostly. Always more concerned with himself. I plan to get back at him too, but this stupid American girl, always asking me questions and being so nosy, got in the way of that. I would absolutely love to get my hands..." Wait. Helena cuts her off again. This American girl, you say? Tell me everything. The two spend the rest of the evening catching each other up on Nancy foiling both of their crimes and how she's the reason they're even sitting in prison, wasting their life away. It's her fault, not theirs. Helena says to Anja, well, I always promised that little girl I'd come back for her. Looks like it's time I kept my promise. Over the course of the next few months, Helena and Anja form a tight friendship and form an alliance with each other, a common goal: take down Nancy Drew. With several months of planning, Helena and Anja create a plan to break out of prison, and with much success, the two do in fact break out, and they are free from prison and on to the next part of their plan, taking down Nancy. But how do they do this? If you remember from the games, 2 points of conversation occur in both the Phantom of Venice and the Captive Curse that almost kind of overlap each other and are discussed both by Helena and Anja with Nancy, and that topic of conversation is Ned. They may not know exactly where she lives, but a few internet searches with the names Nancy and Ned, they're sure to find a hit of something online to track down their location. So what's their plan? Well, if they could somehow lure Ned and possibly kidnap him, then they would have something to their advantage that would make it really hard for Nancy to say no if any requests were given from Helena and Anja. Through some of Helena's past contacts, this duo were able to hack into Ned's phone and create a text message that appeared as if it were from Nancy asking him to meet her at a certain place and time because they needed to talk. And of course, with their rocky relationships status that's been going on in the past few games, Ned wonders what she could be talking about, and he agrees and meets at that place, only to be knocked out and dragged into a van and taken to a secret hideout location. Now it's up to Nancy to solve the missing case of, where's Ned? I think it's quite possible that Ned's family may even contact her once he doesn't answer any phone calls and it's becoming apparent that Ned is somehow missing. And of course, Nancy's going to accept the mission, but along the way, she's searching for clues to find Ned. She's searching where was the last place he's been. She's interviewing people. She's searching his house. But she gets contacted by this anonymous group, that group being Helena and Anja, that gives Nancy vague clues as to where Ned might be, but also vague clues of where they plan to steal an item of value. It's an ongoing cycle of the news reporting break-ins of stolen valuables and pieces from museums and galleries and wealthy mansions. And Nancy continues to follow the trail and investigate at each location, but she's always a step too late, and she's so down on herself because it's almost as if she can't solve the clues fast enough to catch the culprits before they strike next, just like Phantom of Venice. Of course, this is a mystery that I feel like the Hardy Boys and Bess and George could totally be integrated into and help with, but definitely with some limitations, because this would be a very sensitive case to Nancy and almost feel like she has to do it herself. She has to do it alone, especially because she's also receiving notes that say, "Tell no one this, Nancy. If you do, we will harm Ned more than what we already have." Eventually, Helena and Anja have left Nancy on this complete wild goose chase, and I totally imagine Nancy, she's sitting there in front of a bulletin board with all the clues mapped out that she's discovered, and she's looking over everything that she's uncovered, and finally one clue gives it away on who the culprit is, or should I say culprits. And that clue maybe mentions something about her locket, something that only Helena or Anja would comment on and know, something that really gives their identity away. Now she knows who she's dealing with, and Nancy is more determined than ever to solve this case. And with the help of her friends, they end up finally solving all the puzzles and clues that the culprits have left behind, and Nancy ends up finding the location where they're keeping Ned and sneaks into this abandoned building where they're keeping him. And of course, there's the whole typical villains reveal themselves and uncover everything they've plotted, and they somehow capture Nancy, and they think that they've won, only at the last second when the Hardy Boys and Bess and George bust in there, foiling the entire thing, and it makes national news. And that is my theory on Helena and Anja and how they seek revenge on Nancy Drew. It's a totally wild theory, but so exciting and thrilling if it could, actually play out and be real. But I hope you guys enjoyed this theory. Thank you guys so much for watching my content. I am super excited for what's to come, and hey, let me know on any kind of ideas you have for videos. I already have a list made on some ideas that you guys have reached out for me to make, and I do plan on making those and getting those out as soon as possible. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate all of you, and have a great day.